Right? This is Kevin Commons, who was a solicitor. He was a top solicitor, ran his own practice in Cumbria. 6 months prior to the shootings, there was Cumbrian floods. Now, people were saying that these floods were caused by the water company, right? Because the rainfall was not unprecedented, apparently. And there's a particular reservoir, called Thirlmere Reservoir, which they'd been overfilling, allegedly, right? And that exacerbated the floods. This is what Kevin Commons' law firm was saying, and it was suing United Utilities, the water company, alleging that they caused the floods. Now, you're talking thousands of houses, each with £10,000–20,000 worth of damage. A police officer died in these floods. So you're talking a huge legal case. And if you read articles such as this one, they're pretty convincing that perhaps this water company was negligent and exacerbated these floods. This is Marcus Nixon, who continued the legal action against United Utilities after Kevin Commons had been murdered by Derek Bird. And I did speak to him briefly. I'll mention that in a second. So what made me suspicious was this article, because the two leading figures at United Utilities both stepped down shortly after Derek Bird went on his killing spree. And I just thought that was a bit of a coincidence. This article says that United Utilities dismissed the claim that their chief executive, Philip Green, is considering stepping down. And you can see the date on there. It's the 24th, so it's a week before Derek Bird's killing spree. The main guy is going to step down. It says that dismissed claim, but he did step down not long after. And the managing director, Charlie Cornish, also stepped down in June of 2010. So the two main guys stepped down round about the time of the Derek Bird incident. This is Philip Green, the chief executive, who stepped down with David Cameron. He's got some very powerful friends. He used to be the director and chief operating officer of Reuters. So the point I'm making is, if Kevin Commons' legal action had been successful, this guy, chief exec of United Utilities, probably would have been in prison. Right? Probably. Because the police officer died in those floods. And if they had been found negligent, he's the top guy. So he's the one who would get the blame. I'm not saying that he had anything to do with what happened with Derek Bird. I'm saying that, this guy would have ended up in prison had Kevin Commons' legal action been successful. So I just thought, well, perhaps Derek Bird's been mind-controlled, as set out in this book by Neil Saunders, that it's possible to make people do things against their wishes. And I looked no more into it. I didn't actually look at CCTV evidence or any physical evidence on the day. I just thought that maybe the guy, I didn't question whether he had actually killed these people. And then I received an email just last year. It said, "The main reason I'm contacting you is I was fascinated by your brief talk done whilst you were touring on the Cumbria massacre. I was particularly interested in the claim that United Utilities Water Company were being held culpable for the Cumbria flooding previous to the massacre. Anyway, there is overwhelming evidence that points to a false flag event perpetrated by a possible paramilitary individual using an identical car to Derek Bird, the alleged murderer. Have you looked at this incident in detail at all? I have done quite a bit of research regarding this and I'm convinced this is a state-sponsored massacre. Please get in touch." Okay, so I went to see this witness. I looked at this person's evidence, and based on that, I interviewed him, and then I went to Cumbria. And I've spoken to quite a few witnesses, because I think, as I'm going to explain now, I think it is very smelly. Now, let's just explain what happened on June the 2nd, 2010. This is the mainstream version. Derek Bird, taxi driver. He goes to a place called Lamplugh. He goes into his twin brother's house and murders them in cold blood. Right? This is at 5 o'clock in the morning. He then goes to his solicitor's house at 10:20 in the morning. So there's over a 5-hour gap between these two murders. And I'll come back to why I think that might be the case. He then drives straight into Whitehaven, where he pulls up at a taxi rank, he kills a taxi driver, shoots another taxi driver, shoots 2 more taxi drivers, and then makes his way to Egremont, where he kills a few people there. He's mainly shooting people out of his window. He's stopping his cab, asking them to come over for the time and that kind of thing, and then just shooting them. He then goes to Seascale, kills 3 people there. He kills 12 people in total, injures 11, I think, drives into the woods, dumps his car, and then goes into the woods and allegedly shoots himself. So that's the official story. Now you would imagine that there's mountains of witness testimony, and there is, but there are problems with it. There were, I think, around about 90 people gave statements or were cross-examined at the inquest. This is first-hand witnesses who saw what happened. Now I've tried to get copies or transcripts of those witness testimonies, and I haven't been able to, and I'm going to explain what happened. So I've been relying on mainstream media articles. Now the problem with all of the mainstream media articles of witness statements, and there's lots of witness statements of people who allegedly saw the gunman doing his dirty deeds all the way around here, right? None of them ask the witness what the gunman looked like. It's assumed right from word go that it was Derek Bird. So it's as if they don't need a description of the criminal, of the gunman. So you don't get any descriptions. So that's a major problem, which is why we need the initial statements. Now, you would imagine also there'll be mountains of CCTV, because this is a very busy town with CCTV cameras all over the place, and he actually got out of his car when he's shot at one of the taxi drivers. But they've put out a tiny amount of CCTV, and the amount in the CCTV that they have put out shows a major anomaly, which I'm going to explain to you in a second. This is an article from the Daily Express, and it says, images recorded by a surveillance camera are understood to show in high definition the exact moment Bird pumps bullets into the head of his 43-year-old colleague. The footage is so horrific it can never be shown to the public, say police. So they're saying they have got high definition images showing Derek Bird with his gun, right? But there's no images of Derek Bird with a gun that I've been able to find. Not one CCTV or still image, either before the incident or during the incident. Show me an image of Derek Bird with a gun and I might believe he shot someone. Can you believe that? This guy shot 12 people, or killed 12 people, and shot 11 others, and there's not an image of him with a gun in the public domain. This is the only image they've actually put out. It's a CCTV clip where he drives along, he's fleeing the taxi rank for the first time here after he's allegedly just shot one taxi driver. This is all they've given us. Right? Now, I don't think that shows a gun, and I don't think you can make out who's in that vehicle. The only image I have been able to find which allegedly shows Derek Bird with a gun. Right? Why can't they show us those high-definition images that they described and just blur out the victim? We've got no image of him in the street with a gun. Now, the CCTV images that they have released, I'm just going to go through some of them. This is him at 6 minutes past 5 in the morning in Frizzington, allegedly staking out Kevin Commons, who was his second victim. This is Derek Bird's car here. It's a Citroen Picasso. Now, I'm just going to run through what happened in Whitehaven. So, he shot his twin brother at 5 in the morning. 20 past 10, he shot his solicitor in another village. He's driven into Whitehaven. Now, he drives into Whitehaven. He stops his car, winds the window down. He calls over Darren Rocastle, pumps 2 bullets into him. He dies. He then moves his car about 15, 20 feet further forward, jumps out the car, and he runs up the street where he pursues another taxi driver and he shoots him. Right? He survives, Don Reed. He then gets back in his car, he drives off, and he drives right the way around the town centre in a big square, and he comes back past the same taxi rank. Okay? This time, he just pumps 2 bullets into the side of a building, and some CCTV from that incident has been released, because you see all of the people duck. But he doesn't kill anyone or hit anyone in that incident, just 2 bullets into the side of the hairdressers. He then speeds off. He goes round a corner where he stops at some traffic lights. We all stop at traffic lights when we just killed someone. Anyway, supposedly another taxi driver, he calls over, comes to the window, shoots him, Paul Wilson. He survives, he just gets scratched on the cheek, which is unusual. He actually says in his statement that he thought he'd been shot with a blank, and a blank can cause some damage if you... So he supposedly shot him at point blank range and he survived with just a scratch. Anyway, he then goes on to another part of Whitehaven where he shoots at another taxi driver and the passenger. He then goes off to Egremont and the other places. Okay, so this is him, and you can check all of these images on CCTV, on BBC website and on Whitehaven News websites. They've all been released. So this is him after he's shot Darren Rocastle and shot the other taxi driver. He's got back in the car and he's driving away for the first time. He then drives round the block in a big square. So this is Duke Street here, where the taxi rank is to his left. This is 3 streets away. This is Lowther Street. So he's coming back round the second time to shoot into the taxi rank again. This is Bird's vehicle here, and this is the hairdresser's is just there. So he fires a bullet out his window, and you see these people duck. So he fires 2 bullets, and then he speeds off up this street. He then turns left, comes down this street. This is where he stops at the traffic lights, where he allegedly shoots someone here, but you don't actually see that. All right, now I'm going to show you these images again. Let's just go back. This image is his vehicle at the end of his killing spree, which is dumped at the end of a country lane. He's gone off into the woods. I'm going to show you the video that this comes from. This is from a helicopter.
Derek Bird's few hours of carnage ended near here. What made him start the shootings that ended with 12 people, 13 including himself, dead?
See there, that's a taxi sign on top of his car, okay? Because it was a taxi, allegedly. Now, this is, as I said, this is after he's shot at Down Rocastle. You can see there's clearly something on the top of his car, looks like a taxi sign. And I think they're the same thing, because you've got a little yellow arm or something there to the side, and the vehicle's the other way around. You can see. I think they're probably the same vehicle. Now, and I think it's something like that what we're looking at. Now, if we just summarise these images that I've just showed you, 6 minutes past 5 in the morning, there's no taxi sign on top of the car. Then we've got 10:32 taxi sign on top of the car. 2 streets or 3 streets later, a minute later, no taxi sign. And drives past the taxi rank again, no taxi sign. So this is him driving past the rank after he fires into it the first time, and this is him the second time. So where's the taxi sign gone on top of the car? There is some doubt also about these logos along the side of the car, but you can't really see in the images whether it's there or not. And then this is around the corner again, just a minute later, no taxi sign, and then at the end of the killing spree, taxi sign on top of the car. Okay. Now, what I think this suggests is that there was 2 vehicles, a replica vehicle. I think this possibly is Derek Bird's car, and this is Derek Bird's car. And I think we've maybe got an operative here. Now, I'm going to explain why I think that is the case.